Look at the birthday girl. Look at the birthday girl. She's so pretty. Kyra's 7 today, and I'm so happy. I'm so excited. She obviously has no idea it's her birthday. She just knows she's getting lots of new toys and snacks and treats. And, oh, we're having a great day, aren't we, Pickle? Yes, I love you. She is 7 today, which is very exciting. And as her main birthday present this year, she got this absolutely beautiful new collar from Friendship Collar. This is gorgeous. It's like pale pink with this little like shiny metallic gold heart print on it. It's vegan leather and it comes with a matching bracelet for me, so everyone knows that we're besties for life. It is so exciting and I love it. And like we match and I feel so good about it. The other thing that I really liked about the brand was not only were the collars absolutely beautiful, but for every sale they donate a bunch of food to animal shelters and stuff. And as you know, Kyra is a rescue pup herself. I adopted her from Battersea nearly 2 years ago now. And yeah, so feeding shelter dogs and cats and animals is something really, really close to my heart. So that was kind of why I love this brand and why I chose to get this particular one for her. And I love it. She looks beautiful. It's a perfect present. This isn't sponsored or an ad, by the way. It's just a brand that I really like and that I'm really, really like kind of pleased and happy with. And yeah, I just wanted to give it a little shout out because you look beautiful, don't you, Bean? Don't you, birthday girl? So, hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and another video in which we are going to be reviewing terrible books. Only this time it's not a terrible YouTuber book, but it's another one of these terrible Christian fundamentalist lifestyle books. I have no idea how many of these books are out there other than too many, but let's be honest, as long as they are still being published and written, I am going to keep reviewing them, I am going to keep debunking them and telling you why they're harmful, until hopefully we get the message through to the people that it's gonna help. So today's book is Love Thy Body by Nancy R. Pearcey, and it is subtitled Answering Hard Questions About Life and Sexuality, which in these kinds of books, let's be honest, normally means we're going to be offensive, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, and all-round judgmental, using the Bible to back up our harmful beliefs while we complain about the state of the world today and how it was much better in the good old days. The chapter titles alone should give you an idea of what to expect from this book. It includes gems like Schizoid Sex, Hijacked by the Hookup Culture, The Body in Politic, How the Homosexual Narrative Demeans the Body, Transgender Transreality, God Should Have Made Me a Girl, in quotes. Even Kyra's complaining at that one. So as a lot of these books do, this one starts with an intro about how the world is basically falling apart, you know? People are terrible. They have no morals anymore. What has the world come to? Everything that has ever gone wrong in the world is clearly because we've given basic human rights to women and LGBT plus people, you know? They want to be treated as humans, and that's why everything is terrible. And of course, the only way to stop this is to turn to God. Follow the Bible, but only exactly as these particular people interpret it. Obviously, I was being sarcastic there, but that is basically what this book preaches. And we have seen this in so many books before, particularly ones I've reviewed on this channel, but that doesn't make this one any less offensive or degrading or just plain harmful and wrong. So the introduction reads, and my screen is over there, and that's where all the quotes I have are written, so if you catch me looking kind of past the camera, that's why. So the introduction reads, every day the 24-hour news cycle chronicles the advance of a secular moral revolution in areas such as sexuality, abortion, assisted suicide, homosexuality, and transgenderism. Oh, I hate that word. The new secular orthodoxy is being imposed through virtually all major social institutions, academia, media, public schools, Hollywood, private corporations, and the law. Secular orthodoxy. Are you kidding me? I'm so tired for how some religious people seem to think that atheists have some big agenda and we're trying to force everyone in the world to be an atheist like us. We're trying to get rid of religion. They assume that all atheists are anti-theists, and that's definitely not true, or anti-theists, as some people say. I don't know why I say anti there, I do. People complained about it before, apparently it's too American, but words. Yeah, the author here, throughout this introduction, kind of pushes this weird narrative that apparently atheists have this agenda where we want everyone in the world to be like us, and we don't like any religion anywhere. And that's not necessarily true. I mean, I do believe that things like education, business, politics, the law should be secular, but that doesn't mean I'm against all religion in general. In this case, secular means exactly what it means, separate from religion, in that no one religion should be allowed to control it, because that's the only way to allow true religious freedom. By making sure things like education and the law, politics, business in general is secular, it gives everyone the ability to safely and freely believe or not believe whatever they want, and to practice whatever religion they want in peace. A secular education system or legal system does not mean we're trying to erase religion. It simply means we're trying to allow all religions, or lack of, to coexist. There's definitely some hypocrisy here, because the author of this book clearly only wants religious involvement in these areas of life if it's her religion. And that's not okay. I'm assuming Nancy here is American-based, so, based on other things she's written and other things in this book, so I'm gonna go with that. But can you imagine her outrage if the US government turned around one day and said, okay, we are gonna allow religion to influence our social policies, our laws, what is taught to your kids in school. It is gonna influence what is allowed to be shown in the media and what's not. And that religion is Islam. Nancy here would be absolutely livid, so mad, so angry about it. And that just shows her hypocrisy. It's not that she wants religion to be a part of these things, it's that she wants her religion to be a part of these things. And that's not fair. By having a secular basis for all these things, take education for example. Having a secular basis for education allows kids to learn only what is fact, and then make up their own mind about their beliefs later, once they've got the critical thinking skills and the facts and evidence at hand to be able to make up their own mind. They can learn that X, Y, and Z are religions, and then they can choose whether they want to believe in one or none of them as they get older. Having a secular basis for law and politics means that everyone is allowed to express and practice their religion or their religious beliefs or lack of freely and safely. It means that this woman can go to church whenever she wants. It means that her neighbour can go to mosque whenever they want. It means that the man down the street can decide to do neither of them. It means that the guy who lives across the road can be a pagan, the woman across the street can be a Wiccan. How would it be fair in any kind of society if only one of those people was allowed to freely and safely practice their beliefs? It wouldn't. And that's why we need a secular basis for things. Nancy isn't thinking this through. She's being very narrow-minded, very naive, very close-minded, I would say. Not even just narrow-minded, but close-minded. She's only thinking of herself and her own religion and her own benefit. I can't even speak, sorry. She's not thinking about other people in the world. She's not thinking about society as a whole. She is being selfish, and I don't think that's okay. She also plays the I'm a former agnostic card, and then talks about finding God and how finding God made me happy and therefore it's the only way you can be happy too. You can't really be happy unless you're exactly like me. I hate people who have that narrative. Different people find happiness in different ways, and that's okay. Because she found happiness as a Christian, good for her. I'm not gonna do that. She complains that apparently by valuing everyone as individuals and wanting everyone to be able to express their own beliefs freely and caring about people taking personal responsibility, like I do, as an atheist and someone who wants a secular basis for all the things we mentioned before, apparently by doing that we are, and I quote, devaluing the human being and destroying human rights. Yeah, that sounds about right. She then complains that people like her are always, and again I quote, accused of intolerance and discrimination, branded as bigots and misogynists, and targeted for campaigns of shame and intimidation. Well, maybe if you don't be accused of that stuff, don't do that stuff. I get it, some people are falsely accused. She's not. It's like saying, oh, they called me a misogynist, but I only said women were inferior to men. Or like saying, oh, I'm gonna go cry now because you called me an intolerant bigot because I said that same-sex marriage shouldn't be legal and tried to pretend that transgender people don't exist. I'm just expressing my views. Don't be mad at me. I hate those people. And then she gives this example, which only proves my point. You can't be homophobic and then complain when people call you homophobic. She then goes on to complain about Christians who don't do things exactly her way, and I'm so sick of this by now. One of the reasons I'm not an anti-theist is because I see a lot of religious people who do good and who are good people and who don't use their religion as an excuse for intolerance, And I'm kind of sick of people who complain about religious people who are good people just because they aren't following the rules that they want them to. That makes sense? I feel there's a lot of vague there. Yes. Anyway, Nancy writes, about 2/3 of Christian men watch pornography at least monthly, the same rate as men who do not claim to be Christian. Well, isn't that funny? It's almost as though she's admitting that whether someone is religious or not has little impact on what they do alone in private. And yet she's still going to turn around and blame secular orthodoxy for this. Clearly, men who are religious and men who aren't religious are displaying the same patterns of behaviour. You can't blame secular orthodoxy for that. It's just a human nature thing. It's a natural thing people do. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. Her ignorance is literally exhausting. So then after some boring stuff, which is basically just like a vague repetition of stuff she goes into more detail on later in the book, so we're going to skip that stuff and talk about it later. After all that, she ends her introduction by writing, we live in a moral wasteland where human beings are desperately seeking answers to hard questions about life and sexuality. But there is hope. In the wasteland, we can cultivate a garden. We can discover a reality-based morality that expresses a positive, life-affirming view of the human person. One that is more inspiring, more appealing, and more liberating than the secular worldview. She doesn't half try and make it sound appealing, does she? And so much of it is utter crap. Let's move on to chapter 1, which is kind of like the basis for everything else in the rest of the book. So there's a hell of a lot to cover in this. She kind of talks a lot about science and philosophy and all these ideas, and she gives like a vague overview of the other stuff she's going to talk about in more detail later in the book. There's a hell of a lot to it, and so that's why this is the only chapter we're going to be covering today. And if you want me to go into more detail about the other chapters, we can do that in other videos. Just let me know down in the comments what you want and what you don't. Before we get any further though, because this stuff is quite heavy, I just want to do a little bit of shameless promotion of some of my friends. So 2 of the loveliest people I know are a little kind of country pop music duo sort of thing who go by O&O, and they recently released their latest music video for their new single, Dancing on the Floor, in which me and Kyra feature, and Kyra looks absolutely beautiful and gorgeous in it. Such a little podgy bean, and I love her so much. So if you would like a break from this video, please, please, please go check out my friends, support them, send them some love, tell them that I sent you, go watch the video. It's a fantastic song, which you can also listen to on Spotify and all the other good places. I will leave a link down in the description below. Go give them some love and support from me and Kyra, please, and check out how gorgeous my podgy little bean is in the video. So in chapter 1, which is titled I Hate Me, The Rise and Decline of the Human Body, Nancy talks a hell of a lot about what she calls the body-person dichotomy, which is like a thing. You know, you might know it as kind of like the sort of body-mind duality, body-person duality, like all this kind of stuff. And in this chapter, she kind of goes over her, kind of like as an introduction to her basic beliefs about things like abortion and same-sex relationships and being transgender and sex in general and all this other stuff. She starts off covering abortion, and interestingly, we seem to share a lot, well, I wouldn't say we share a lot of the same views, but I definitely have a lot of the views that she writes about and critiques, funnily enough. It's like, to some extent, she acknowledges what I believe and then takes it and jumps to a completely random, ridiculous conclusion with it. And you'll see what I mean. Let me read you some bits and we can discuss it, okay? So she opens by writing about a British, I think, like, journalist. Anyway. A few years ago, an article appeared by a British broadcaster named Miranda Sawyer, who described herself as a liberal feminist, kind of like me. In the article, she said she had always been firmly pro-choice, like me, until she became pregnant with her own baby. Then she began to struggle. I was calling the life inside me a baby because I wanted it, yet if I hadn't, I would think of it as a group of cells that it was okay to kill. That seemed irrational to me, maybe even immoral. Babies in the womb don't qualify as human only if someone wants them. I disagree with that last line a lot. I think they do only qualify as human if someone wants them to a certain extent, but we'll talk about that in more detail later. Don't just take that at face value. There's reasons for it and stuff. Nancy goes on to write, Sawyer had run up against a wall of reality, and reality did not fit her ideology, so she began researching the subject, and even produced a documentary. Finally, she reached her conclusion. In the end, I have to agree that life begins at conception, so yes, abortion is ending that life. Then she added, but perhaps the fact of life isn't what's important, it's whether that life has grown enough to start becoming a person. That's what I agree with. But Nancy complains about this. What has happened here to the concept of the human being? It has been torn in two. If a baby is a human life from conception but not a person until some later time, then clearly these are two different things. Yes, they are. This is a radically fragmented, fractured, dualistic view of the human being. But yeah, no, this is generally how I view things. And I know not everyone agrees, but I genuinely believe that while a fertilized egg or an embryo or even a fetus to some extent may be human, they're not all people or individuals. I think what makes someone a person or an individual is a lot more complex. In my view, personhood or individuality can be applied to a bundle of cells in the womb if the host wants to apply that label. Ultimately, the host is in charge of what's happening in there, and if the host wants to apply that label, they can. So this means that even if it's like, I don't know, an 8-week-old little embryo and someone stabs you in the stomach and kills it, if you wanted that baby, if you applied the label of personhood to it, that is murder, because you as the host have applied that label and someone is killing that person without your consent. Does that make sense? So if the person, the host, wants the baby, then it is an individual or a person from the moment of conception. However, if the host doesn't want it, if it's a bundle of cells multiplying in you without your consent, it gets a lot more complicated. And when it comes to deciding whether it's a person or an individual or not, I think we need to look at the physiology at different stages and figure out what's happening there. At what point does a bundle of multiplying cells essentially exploiting you for your resources without your consent, at what point does that stop being an unwanted, parasitic, I don't know, part of you and become an individual or a person in its own right? You have to look at the biology, you have to look at the physiology, you have to look at the development and see what kind of, I don't want to say skills, but what's happening within that at different stages. I don't think it's simply being living cells or being multiplying cells or having human DNA that makes something an individual. I don't even think it's just a mix of those things. If simply having living multiplying cells was the only criteria for individuality or personhood, then why is it okay to kill some cells and not others? Why are we okay taking antibiotics to kill literally thousands upon thousands of bacteria cells, but we're not okay stopping a human blastocyst from multiplying further so it can't grow anymore, which has far, far less cells? Why are we okay cutting down trees, picking flowers, using weed killer? Why are we okay killing insects, mammals, birds? Why is it okay to kill some living cells and not others? If human DNA is the factor, then why don't we feel bad about the, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of human skin cells that we shed every day? Why don't we feel bad about removing cancer cells and tumours? Why don't we feel bad about amputating body parts, cutting off skin, taking out fat for plastic surgery? And if the only criteria is living, multiplying cells with human DNA, then I have to ask again, what makes us so special? Why are humans somehow above any other living creature or being? The fact is, it's not that simple. A lot more goes into defining whether something is an individual or a person or not. Can it survive without a host, for example? What's its level of brain function? Can it feel and understand pain? Is it sentient? Is it conscious? Does it have a sense of self? If you want to know more about this, I go over the science and biology of this and talk about when specifically I think a fetus becomes an individual in a 2-part collab video I did with Holy Koolaid. So like I say, I've already kind of gone over that in quite a lot of detail, so I won't do it again, but if you want to hear more about that and look at the science behind that and my reasoning behind that, go check out those videos. They will be linked down in the description below. But ultimately, yes, I do think there is a huge difference between a body and personhood or individuality, whatever you want to call it and label it. And I understand that while Miranda Sawyer admitted that her views seemed irrational, I don't think they were. In my view, before a bundle of cells, because that's what it is. Before a bundle of cells has the capacity to survive without a host, before it can feel pain, before it has any consciousness or sentience, I think it is entirely up to the host to decide whether it's a human being or not. And there is a rational reason for that, which I go over in the video with Holy Koolaid. Yeah, I agree with that, but Nancy, the author, does not like this view at all, and she does go on to critique it poorly. She talks more about this like personhood theory, and she says that the fetus is acknowledged to be human from conception, in the sense that it is a biological organism knowable by the empirical methods of science. Yeah, true. But it is not thought to have any moral standing, nor does it warrant legal protection. In my opinion, no, not unless the host wants it. Later, at some undefined point in time, it jumps into the upper story and becomes a person, typically defined in terms of a certain level of cognitive functioning, consciousness, and self-awareness. Only then does it attain moral and legal standing. Yeah, I think this is actually a really nice summary and something that I agree with. And I know Nancy's saying it to be like, ugh, can you believe this? But yeah, no, that is what I believe, completely. The one issue I have is with her like use of undefined, later at some undefined point in time. It's not undefined. It's defined by when the fetus develops those functions. Yes, it can be hard to identify, but it's not undefined by any means. So then she goes on to offer some critiques, in which she writes, "Human life in itself is thought to have no value, and what we do with it has no moral significance. Just because apparently we're recognizing the difference between human cells and an individual. That means human life has no value? No..." It's just a weird conclusion to come to, you know? It's a big jump. She writes, "If you favour abortion, you are implicitly saying that in the early stages of life, an unborn baby has so little value that it can be killed for any reason or no reason without any moral consequence." Well, I don't think it's a baby at that point, so yeah. Whatever your feelings, that is a very low view of life. Then, by sheer logic, you must say that at some later time the baby becomes a person, at which point it acquires such high value that killing it would be a crime. The implication is that as long as the pre-born child is deemed to be human but not a person, it is just a disposable piece of matter, a natural resource like timber or corn. It can be used for research and experiments, tinkered with genetically, harvested for organs, and then disposed of with other medical waste. Yeah, as long as the host doesn't want it. Yeah, that is what I believe. And she might not like it. Those early stage embryo cells aren't people or individuals. They don't have any of the skills or functions needed to be classed as an individual. They don't have any sense of self or consciousness or awareness or anything. And so they can just be disposed of without them knowing anything about it. The cells aren't conscious or sentient. They can be disposed of in the same way that blood or limbs or skin cells or whatever can be disposed of, and the skin cells won't know anything about it. Just like these embryonic cells won't know anything about it, because in those early stages, they don't have that capacity or function to do that. And again, she just keeps jumping to these absolutely crazy conclusions. She writes, "Personhood theory thus presumes a very low view of the human body, which ultimately dehumanizes all of us." No! For if our bodies do not have inherent value, then a key part of our identity is devalued. What we will discover is that this same body-person dichotomy, with its denigration of the body, is the unspoken assumption driving secular views on euthanasia, sexuality, homosexuality, transgenderism, and a host of related ethical issues. I disagree completely that this view dehumanizes everyone. In fact, I would argue it is the opposite. It stops us dehumanizing people. It's showing what it means to be human, what creates us, what gives us value, what makes us individuals, what makes us special, what makes us different. Once we understand the biological and physiological mechanisms behind what makes us individuals, it does put a hell of a lot more value on the bodies that we currently have, because we know it's directly responsible for like creating us and our personalities and how we reason and value everything. Does that make sense? Like, once we understand how, say, like the brain creates personality, we value our brain a hell of a lot more, I think, because we're like, damn, that is doing some pretty amazing stuff. I don't know if I'm making sense with this. I think I'm kind of rambling a little bit. I don't know if I'm explaining this as well as I want to. I'm sorry, I'm a little rambly today. But if you want to like actually find out more about that kind of stuff, there's a book that I recommend, and I've recommended it many times on this channel before, but it's called Synaptic Self by Joseph LeDoux, or it's French. I can't pronounce French. Read it, fine. Speak it, no. I'm northern, I can't do the accent. But anyway, it's a fantastic book about basically how our brains and the connections in our brains and so on all work together to form our personality and who we are. And fantastic book. Go read it. I will leave an affiliate link to it down in the description below. It talks about this stuff in way more detail and in a way more concise and a way more easy to understand way than I ever could. So I just finished recording this entire video, and it turns out I was speaking for around 45 minutes. So I'm going to split this video up into two. Please let me know what you thought of this first part down in the comments below, and I'll be posting the second part in the next couple of days. Thank you for watching, guys.